Welcome back and thank you for joining us, dear viewers. The 6th edition of the Egypt Can Conference is being launched today under the auspices of His Excellency the President, entitled Egypt Can with Industry. The annual conference is to be held for 2 days and is organized by the Ministry of Immigration in cooperation with the Ministries of Trade and Industry, the Public Enterprise Sector, and the Ministry of State for Military Production, as well as the Arab Organization for Industrialization, the General Authority for Investment, and the concerned authorities. In statements on May the 15th, Minister of Immigration and Egyptian Expatriate Affairs, Dr. Nabila Makram, told Al-Watan newspaper that the 6th edition of Egypt Can Conference, themed by industry, will focus on the future of artificial intelligence, AI, digitalization, and programming. So we will be talking about the conference and the role that AI can play with industry in the company of our distinguished guest, Dr. Nevine Makram Labib, computer science and data science consultant. A very good morning to you, Dr. Nevine. Thank you for joining us. Good morning. So, Dr. Nevine, as usual, when we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, we like to start by just reminding our viewers and those who don't know of the term itself, artificial intelligence, what is exactly meant by it.
It's kind of transferring intelligence to the machine. That's all. So we're trying to
empower. Right. Sorry, Dr. Nevine. Sorry, dear viewers. We have a technical problem here. We'll take a short break and we'll be back. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us and welcome back. So we got Dr. Nevine's microphones back. Thank you, Dr. Nevine. Good morning. And we were talking about the term artificial intelligence itself in the simplest form, please, so that everybody can understand.
I was just trying to explain the term. So we're trying to imitate the human intelligence. Or in other words, we're trying to transfer human intelligence to machines so that machines help humans in performing several tasks. That's in its simplest form or the simplest definition of artificial intelligence.
So it must have a big role with industry. I mean, it just makes sense because in the past, you know, and also now, but in the past there was a total dependence. I mean, the machines were totally dependent on the human mind. So now AI is transferring this information to the machines so we can understand that it can have a big role with industry, right?
Yes.
Can you expand on that?
Nowadays, we're working on another model. We're trying to empower the machines, which has its pros and cons, of course, but we're trying to help humans in several tasks, especially in the industry field, whether we're talking industry in general, as a generic term, or the software industry. So for us, AI is kind of transferring expertise and working on analyzing data in a special way. That's why in industry it's very useful, because in the industry field we have big data and we have several data that we can work on in order to provide several organizations with what we call the competitive advantages. So that's our main purpose whenever we're using AI in this domain.
Right. I mean, you get this, I got the sense when I heard you now talking that there's something that has to do with robots here or robotics in the issue. So we give the machine information and it acts upon the information it gets. So the machine is somehow some type of robot then? Can we say that?
Actually, we have two perspectives. Whether we're talking robotics, as you just mentioned, and by the way, we have a new term. It's called Cobots, not robots, because we'll be having in several industries the robots performing some tasks that are usually performed by humans, and we'll have the Cobot. The Cobot will be there to work on the communication between the robots and the humans who are in the same place, in the same workplace. So that's a new, again, it's a new model.
So Cobot is the
collaborative robot that's helping the communication between the robots and the humans who are actually working together.
Some kind of median here, transferring
yes.
information. So very nice to know that. So can you elaborate for us, Dr. Nevine, on how can artificial intelligence be used as a powerful tool in industrial businesses?
Okay. In addition to the robots and the cobots, we can make use of the artificial intelligence techniques in the analytics field. So we can gather and collect different data from various sources, and then we can make what we call the predictive analytics. So when you have some prediction in the industry, then you can perform in a better way. You'll be able to be more efficient and more effective because you'll be ready, you'll be proactive, you'll be ready for the markets, and you can work on the prices, for example, of the raw materials. You can work on the demand of the market and so on.
Since you mentioned data, Dr. Nevine, so I have to ask you, how can AI help turn data into efficiency and competitiveness with modern applications?
Okay. First of all, with the IT, we were working on the data and turn it into information, and then providing this information to the decision makers so that to help and support the decision-making process. But nowadays, we're talking about data-driven decision-making, which is quite different. We collect data from various sources, as I just mentioned, and then we make this analytics so that we can provide our decision makers with different insights. We call it insights, not information. These insights help them in taking proper action in the future. So that's a different aspect. It's not only turning the data into information as we used to do, but it's turning the data into actionable information or insights to be more accurate.
I'm sure that there is useful information and perhaps less useful information. So how important is it in your field to always differentiate between what is really class A information and what is not? Because I would assume that sometimes you could have a lot of information
that is not useful.
Yeah.
Yes. You mentioned a very good point, very smart point. Because it's not about having huge amounts of data, it's about having good data. Because we have two types. In our IT jargon, we usually say good data and noisy data. For example, you can have huge amounts of data that are not updated, not accurate, not complete, and sometimes not credible. So you cannot work or use these data in order to provide insights to the decision makers, or else you'll be providing bad reports, okay, as we call it. So we have, first of all, to work on the cleaning data, so that working with the missing values, for example, sometimes you have missing values that are very important, with the name, the ID of a patient, for example. Let's talk in the healthcare field. So we have, first of all, to find a solution to the missing values, and to find a solution to make the data good data. And then we work on the analytics part, and in this part, we work on what we call the attribute selection. So we select the most important fields, the most important data that will be useful for the insights, and that's with the help of the domain experts. We usually work in a team, so we're not only data scientists, but we have people from, or other experts from the domain itself.
I would assume that this is a very important stage, or one of the most important stages, because Dr. Nevine, even if the data is credible, maybe it's not so significant to a certain decision that is to be made. Is that correct?
Yes, that's why we train our system. We try to make use of data, huge amounts of data, and then use some analytics techniques in order to get to know the most suitable or the most appropriate or the most relevant data fields. And then we take the opinion of the domain experts before working on these special data.
Right. So, Dr. Nevine, what are the types of AI that can be utilized in the industrial sectors?
Okay, actually we can say that artificial intelligence is the big umbrella, and then we have what we call the machine learning. And by machine learning, we're trying to make the machine learn by itself, without our help, without our intervention as humans. And we have another subset, which is the deep learning. With deep learning, again, we're talking machine learning, but using artificial neural networks. We're trying to make it work like our brains, because with the morphology of the brain, we have neural networks. So we're trying to imitate the same model and provide our system with the artificial neural networks in order to help it in the analytics field. These are mainly the three subsets, or the three types, if I may say.
Right. Dr. Nevine, this conference, the Egypt Can with Industry conference, is discussing ways of deepening the local component of the technological industry, the technology industry. So it's been a policy, or Egypt has been trying for years now to depend on local components, to depend on local products, to so as to save foreign currency and lessen imports and improve the economy at large. How can AI play a role in this grand scheme?
Okay, actually we can transfer the expertise in any domain related to the industry, not only the software industry, as I mentioned, but we can make use of the expertise, and we can make use of the analytics in order to provide our country with some patterns, some indicators, some insights to work on. So we're trying these days to focus on the IT industry itself. We're trying to have our own software, our own hardware, and that will be a very important point for us, because since we're relying on the AI and the AI strategy, and we're trying to implement this strategy in every organization in Egypt, so we should have our own solutions. We call it AI solutions or intelligent solutions that will be developed by our youth, by our software engineers, and not to be totally dependent, like other countries, on other companies and other organizations.
So how far are we moving in that direction? I mean, the progress we've been making in that specific direction.
I guess we're doing a very good job, because we have very good developers in Egypt. Like, for example, these developers are working for other countries, working for the States, working for India. For example, I'm a professor of artificial intelligence in one of the governmental universities in India. So you can imagine that nowadays they're looking at us in a different way. We're actually working with them in the development of software. So we can do it for our country.
And certainly India is a leader in that
it's number
field,
one.
sure.
Yes.
Dr. Nevine, also the conference is covering the industry of environment-friendly automotives and means of transport. Of course, the issue of fighting global warming and climate change is very important. And Egypt is leading a role internationally in that regard. Of course, it's going to host the COP27 in November here in Sharm el-Sheikh. So again, the environment-friendly industries and AI, how can we link them, and how can AI benefit progress of environment-friendly industries?
Again, it's implementing the same model, because nowadays we're moving from workers, human workers, to robots. And this will have an impact related to environment, related to the expenses, related to many other aspects. And on the other hand, working on the analytics part, so that we can get to know what will be happening regarding environment, again, or regarding any other aspect, and trying to be ready, trying to eliminate any problem, to avoid any problem, and to get to know the reasons why these problems might occur.
And Dr. Nevine, you mentioned the youth and their important role, of course, in our future. Youth nowadays are showing more interest in technology, that's very obvious, and more advanced branches of science. So what about the education level, or the quality of education in this field, in AI, for our youth in Egypt at the moment?
Actually, we have many programs tackling this point, and we have multidisciplinary programs trying to apply AI techniques in several domains. And also we have some training programs related to digital transformation, digitization, and AI, so that to make the youth aware of what's going on in the global market. they're ready by now.
Are these programs like costly, or are there some of them are free and others are, you know, with symbolic fees?
Actually, most of them are free.
Good.
These are governmental initiatives in order to develop the skills of the youth.
Great. The startups and AI can, I'm sure also AI has a role of, you know, help the success of startups. Now, usually those who embark on a startup, do they do the AI themselves, or do they go to experts like yourself and others in the field so as to give them advice on how to move?
It depends, because some of the startups are linked to the fintech, to the finance field. So sometimes they try to take our expertise in this field. In other startups, they're making use of AI and they're actually developers. So you have the two types, the two models.
I guess people have been practicing AI for
A very long time.
Yeah, for thousands of years, but maybe without using the term, right?
Yes, without getting to know the definition or the concept itself.
Yeah.
They thought it was pure IT, but whenever IT comes to the decision making, to helping in the decision making process, then we're talking artificial intelligence.
We must be using AI in our lives daily, even without knowing, right? Even in our, you know, relationships, even in every aspect. I guess AI can get into any part of life, even if it's social relationships.
In the social networks, for example.
Yeah.
That's a main usage of artificial intelligence, because they're trying again to apply this analytics to get to know our opinions and how we think about different products, and then to sell this expertise or these insights to the organizations, to several organizations, so as to help them in their marketing strategy. So you'll find that AI is being used in many domains.
I know this is a difficult question, but because we're getting close to the end of our discussion, I guess the viewers would also, like myself, like to hear an answer to it. There must be cons also for AI. I mean, it cannot only be pros. So if there are cons, what would the cons look like?
Okay, that's a tough question. Okay, the cons are related to the ethics. Ethics of implementing artificial intelligence in any domain. Because sometimes we think that intelligent solutions or intelligent systems are not biased, whereas intelligent systems may be biased. They can be biased because whenever you're feeding the system with biased sample of data, then you get biased results. So we should be aware of this. Some people think that AI is straightforward and it will provide us with unbiased results, but it's not the case, because we're still there as humans. So we have our intervention in the system. So we should be aware, especially when tackling some domains like the healthcare, for example. We should be very careful. So that's a main, I think that's a main disadvantage.
Very clear. Final question, Dr. Nevine. How, in your opinion, can AI have a direct impact on Egypt's development strategies and long-term vision?
Again, working on the analytics field. Because, for example, we need first of all to describe what's going on, and then to get to know the prediction, what will happen, what is expected to happen, what are the internal and external factors that might affect the industry in our country or the performance in any organization, and then trying to be proactive and trying to have some decisions on time, because the time of the decision is very important.
Right. It's time for us to end this segment now, dear viewers. On behalf of you, we thank very much Dr. Nevine Makram Labib, Professor of Computer Science and Data Science Consultant. Always a great pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dear viewers, please stay with us. My dear colleague Mahisi Rabia will be back to resume this morning's edition of The Breakfast Show. Don't go away.